Iron Supporting Food Banks collects food and cash donations for needy families in Newham Borough and beyond. Please consider making a donation via their Just Giving page, the link for which you will find in the description section of this stream. Come on, you Irons!
West Ham are massive, everywhere we go. West Ham are massive, everywhere we go. Everywhere we go. West Ham are massive, everywhere we go. West Ham are massive, everywhere we go. Everywhere we go.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the West Ham Massive. Thanks for joining us, and please don't forget to like, comment on, and share this stream to your social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're new around here, and don't forget to hit the bell icon for alerts of new content. And please remember, all these things you can do are free of charge to you, take you a couple of seconds, and they help to grow the channel into something bigger and better down the track. And we always thank you very much indeed for your support in this matter. And we are here to discuss Premier League match day 6 of 38, where the mighty West Ham United rocked up at the G-Tech Community Stadium yesterday afternoon, planted a claret and blue flag in the centre circle, and came away with a 1-1 draw. Wouldn't you believe it? I mean, look, I laugh because our record there has been so poor in the Premier League that I'm actually more than happy with a point. I said that in the preview. I said I'd have been happy with a point. I said I thought we'd get beat. And I hope that I was wrong, and I was, and I'm perfectly comfortable with that. So, obviously, you guys in the live chat, get stuck in with your comments. I'll get through as many of them as I possibly can. Keep an eye on the ticker at the bottom. It will change intermittently with certain facts and figures about the game that took place yesterday. One of which we have to discuss is the officials. And I'm also going to press this button, and hopefully it's going to work this week. Hopefully it's going to work. I've got a little presentation that I'm going to press the button. Okay. Yep. It's there we go. It's not quite working the way that I thought it was, but there you go. It is what it is. I'll have to do that manually then, won't I? Right. Okay. So let's get down to it. So yesterday, we obviously went out to the G-Tech, and this was the team that Julen Lopetegui, who's obviously under quite a bit of pressure, put out. My thoughts on the starting 11. I'll get my thoughts on the starting 11 for us out of the way first, because it's probably going to be really what you'll really want to hear. Not so much about what Brentford kicked out, really, let's be honest. We're all West Ham fans, or at least most of us, I'm guessing, are. So my first observation was, oh, great, brilliant. He's brought in Debo. He's dropped out Mavropanos. I think that's the correct move, not a problem. I then looked at the central midfield division. Rodriguez, Souček, Lucas Paquetá. Rodriguez, for me, I don't know about you. I think that he's got, I don't know, he doesn't look like he's got the most amount of pace in the Premier League. I mean, look, you know, there are players that don't have that as an attribute that can survive and indeed thrive. But I've not been overly impressed with him in claret and blue. I've got to be truthful with you. So I looked at that central midfield three and just thought, ooh, they could get overrun. I mean, one of them's a player that also is in Lucas Paquetá, who's not looked really anywhere close to his best this season. But, you know, hopefully the manager knows what he's doing. Obviously, Kudus was put out on the left again, which is that the right move? I'm not so sure. Mickey up top, again, I looked at that and went, do you know what? Actually, I think that if anyone deserves a go up top, it's probably Danny Ings more than Antonio. But you've got to put your faith in the manager that he knows what he's doing, or the head coach. Sorry, I'm very old school, guys. But that was my thoughts on our starting 11. There was a little bit of concern from myself. And then when I looked at the Brentford 11, you know, the standout name for me, I mean, was the guy that I said in the preview as I'd identified as, and I think most people probably sort of like would identify as the danger man, was Brian Mbeumo. You know, a sort of like a player that probably, whilst Ivan Toney was at the club, was in his shadow. Well, now he's no longer at the club, stepped out of the shadow. He's the main man as far as I'm concerned. and that was their 11. Keane Lewis Potter was a player that we was linked to going back a season or two. He's kind of like a mirror image, at least people would have you believe, whether he is, whether he isn't, but a mirror image, if you will, of Jared Bowen. They share a commonality in that they both have played for Hull City in the past. But that was their lineup. It was a 4-4-2 according to this particular piece. So that was pretty much that. You know, I just sort of looked at it and thought, okay, fair enough. The first half got off to the worst possible start, as you can see there in the bottom left-hand quadrant. Within 37 seconds, would you believe, Bryan Mbeumo has put the home team 1 goal to the good. It was an attack that come originally down the left-hand channel. I think that, to be fair, I do wonder whether Emerson's getting targeted now, guys. I think that he's not looked anything like his previous incarnation in claret and blue. He's I don't know. Is he carrying an injury or something? I don't know. Is there something going on there? Is it maybe even that he's sort of like, I don't know, it's his mate, sort of Lucas Paquetá, what he's going through? Is there some sort of carryover? I don't know. I'm looking for answers. I'm looking for reasons, because this Emerson has faded badly. As I say, maybe it's an injury. Obviously, he came off at halftime, as we'll discuss later. But they came down the left-hand channel originally. The ball was played in. I also thought that his opposite number, as far as the West Ham defence is concerned, Aaron Wan-Bissaka was a little bit sort of slow to react when the ball was played across, and a little bit of a ping-pong. Jean-Claire Todibo got his head to the ball. Some people might turn around and say maybe he could have got more on it. I disagree. I think he got what he could to it to try and sort of clear the ball away. But then the ball drops to Bryan Mbeumo, and he sort of like lets fly with a volley that arrows towards Alphonse Areola's top left-hand corner. It nestles in the back of the net. They're off and running 1-0. And Julen Lopetegui, who's under tremendous pressure, must have sat there and thought, oh my goodness, this is not the start that we wanted. And it was 1-0 to the Bees. You know, you're sitting there and you're thinking, this is the worst possible start. It's got to get better, hasn't it? Well, I think in the first half, it was, to be honest with you, from that point on, it was sort of, you know, pretty much of a muchness. I mean, I would say that we had the lion's share of shots. I mean, if you look at the next slide, which I think will illustrate the point. I mean, this is after the end of 90, but even at the end of 45, we had quite a lot of shots. We was quite busy in the final third, but the problem is that our finishing was just not up to standard. We had 19 shots over the entirety of the match, but only 3 of them were on target, and obviously one of them was the goal, which we'll discuss in due course. But we was, like I say, we was creating opportunities. We was having shots, and I do apologise for my dog barking. We was having shots. We were just not able to sort of like get a decent chunk of them on target and make the goalkeeper, Mark Flecken, work for his corn. I mean, again, a testament to that is the fact that, like I say, 19 shots, 3 shots on target. One of them was a goal. The 10 shots off target. Look at that. I mean, that is incredibly wasteful. Whereas Brentford only had 2 shots off target of their 8. So over half of the shots that we had was off target. I mean, that probably tells a bit of a story. I think maybe the head coach needs to get the players on some finishing drills or something like that. We're creating chances. We're just not making the most of them, I don't think. And therein lies the problem as far as yesterday's match was concerned. But anyway, I mean, as far as the first half was concerned, as I say, I think that we did make a bit of a recovery of sorts. We didn't manage to sort of get into the dressing room, the changing rooms level. It was still 1-0 when the halftime whistle went. But I think we had a couple of opportunities. There was a run from Mohamed Kudus that was fashioned by Michail Antonio, just sort of like around the halfway, the centre circle, had his back to goal. He's taken the ball down. He's offloaded it to Thomas Souček, who actually played it. You know, for people that say that Thomas Souček's game is not passing, he actually played quite a nice little pass in this instance from the offload from Antonio. Played a nice little pass into the run of Kudus, who, again, like I say, he's on the left. I know people say that's not his preferred position, but at the end of the day, he's an international Premier League footballer. He should be able to adapt. The best players can adapt, and they can sort of do the best that they can. He obviously had a run. He had a good sort of like surge into the penalty box. Got a left foot shot away. The unfortunate thing is it was a powerful enough shot, don't get me wrong, but it was straight at the goalkeeper. Lacked any sort of accuracy and was straight at the goalkeeper, Mark Flecken, who just sort of like basically just made a pretty routine save. There was nothing really sort of earth-shattering about that. And a little while later, we had another opportunity, and this was sort of like the ball pinging around. Jared Bowen and Michail Antonio between them managed to fashion an opportunity that ended up falling to Michail Antonio. He had a shot that he dragged past Mark Flecken's left-hand post. It was a poor effort. I mean, as far as I was concerned. Now, I don't actually think, in truth, that Mickey had his worst game that I've ever seen in Claret and Blue. Okay, didn't score a goal. He did get an assist, which we'll talk about momentarily. But he was busy. He was buzzing around. He was quite strong. I thought actually he did quite well in despite the fact that he had a goal. But I mean, we got in at the first half interval, 1 goal down. We've obviously had a go, but just couldn't manage to get the equaliser to sort of like gain parity. We then start the second half, and it was about 9 minutes in when there was this opportunity that we fashioned, and the ball was pinging around the penalty box. It was a little bit of Thomas Souček, a little bit of Michail Antonio, a little bit of Jared Bowen. The ball ends up pinging around and ends up falling to the feet of Michail Antonio, he does actually have a shot. I mean, if you go back and look at it, it definitely is a shot, but it's probably one of the worst shots in a penalty box of a striker in the Premier League that you'll ever see. But some way, somehow, the ball bobbles through, and standing there is Thomas Souček. And as he's falling down to the ground, he manages to wrap his left foot around the ball and sort of like just managed to steer it just past Mark Flecken in the nick of time. Off he goes. He does his little whirly celebration, and we're 1-1. It was, I think it was deserved, if I'm being truthful. I think that we'd worked hard enough and that we'd managed to put Brentford under enough pressure that I think that at that point a goal was the least that we deserved, to be honest with you. But there was a couple of changes that was made at the halftime interval that I'd need to talk about, just to sort of like this is like a Quentin Tarantino movie. You might have noticed I sometimes do this. I'll go from here and then I'll go back and then I'll go forward and all of those things. But minute 45, there was a couple of substitutions that was made by Julen Lopetegui that I think really need to be drilled down into. And I'd like to get your opinions on whether there was anything to it or whether it was just tactical, because there was 2 players that were introduced, but also 2 players that obviously had to get withdrawn. Now, the first one, and I referenced earlier about Emerson. Now, Emerson came off at half-time. He was replaced by Konstantinos Mavropanos. Now, what happened was that Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who started the game at right back, shifted over to replace Emerson at left back. And Mavropanos, who can play as a right back, slotted in and was Wan-Bissaka's replacement. Quite interesting that, because sitting there on the bench was a right back that could have been utilised in Vladimir Kufal, yet he wasn't, which I found quite interesting, and I've got a theory about that. But that I'm going to save for another day and another time and another place, actually. You might find my theories popping up on another YouTube channel fairly shortly. Hammers Chat. Anyway, but Mavropanos replaced Emerson, but not positionally, just on the team sheet. Wan-Bissaka replaced Emerson positionally. Mavropanos went to right back. But the interesting one was that Carlos Soler came on. Now, Carlos Soler, actually, in the very limited cameos that I've seen him in a claret and blue shirt, I've actually been quite impressed with him. But he replaced Mohamed Kudus. Now, it came out later that it wasn't an injury that was why Kudus was pulled off. It was a tactical decision on the part of Lopetegui, which I'm wondering what's going to be the fallout of that. Is that going to be something that Mohamed Kudus is going to be on board with? Or is there going to be a little bit of a residual problem that's maybe lurking in the background? Footballers have very, very fragile egos. And I don't know whether this might be something that long-term might not play out too well. We will wait and see. But Carlos Soler and Mavropanos were the introductions at half-time. The rest of the second half played out. There was a couple more substitutions that was made. Michail Antonio. It was funny actually because what I was watching, the substitutions were ready to be made quite a bit ahead of the actual substitutions being made, but there wasn't a break in play for the players to come on. They were sort of like they were waiting there. They were getting warmed up. They were waiting for sort of a suitable break in play, and then there was two more substitutions that was made. Now, one of them was Michail Antonio was blowing out of his backside. We all know that he's only got about an hour in the tank and then he's done. Well, he lasted an hour and 15 minutes. He lasted till minute 75. He was replaced by Danny Ings. That pretty much doesn't really require too much more discussion. Straightforward, done. However, also brought on at this juncture was Crescencio Somerville, who actually, again, same as Soler, I've been quite impressed with what I've seen of him in his little cameo appearances. I did question whether he should have started. I think he should have started, in my opinion. I know that you could make the case that he started against Chelsea, he started against Liverpool. Was he, the head coach, trying to give him a little bit of a rest? Maybe, but he's a young, fit athlete. So I don't really think that playing 3 games in that quick succession would have really been that much of a problem to him. And there were other players that played all 3. So not quite sure that stacks up. But okay, he comes on, right? But the player that comes off was Lucas Paquetá. Now, I think as far as the performance from Paquetá was concerned, it was a bit of a mixed bag yesterday. There were little signs that he was starting to sort of like get to grips with things. He actually played quite a key role in the equaliser if you go back and watch it. Although, like I say, it was Michail Antonio that goes down as getting the assist. And from what I understand, I've told that was his 100th goal involvement in Premier League football for West Ham, which is an achievement. Say what you want about Michail, he has been a great servant to the club. Maybe his best days are behind him, but he's still got a role to play. But Paquetá comes off. And it was very, very obvious that he was not happy with that decision. He comes off, he's shaking his head. Now, that's fine. I actually would prefer that a player comes off and isn't happy with the fact that they're being withdrawn. I think that's... I'd be quite annoyed if... I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a different thing if you're 3-0 up at home and you're playing champagne football and you've got the hat-trick ball already tied up and your manager brings you off with 10 minutes to go to a standing ovation. That's a different thing. 1-0, 1-1 away from home. We're battling for supremacy with our London rivals at a ground that we've never traditionally done too well at. And you're hooked off with about 15 minutes or so to go. It was fairly obvious he wasn't impressed with that decision. We'll see it again. They're the two interesting ones. Kudus and Paquetá. I look at those substitutions and go, how's that going to play out long term? Are they going to be a little bit miffed at that? And as I say, I've got no problem if they are. I mean, they should be really and truly. Wouldn't want them to be sort of like jumping cock a hoop, especially Kudus coming off at halftime 1-0 down. The other substitution, I'll just give him a mention because he's turned into a bit of a cult hero. 91 minutes, it was Andy Irving coming on for Jared Bowen. For those of you, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but Andy Irving's introduction last week against Chelsea actually resulted in £100 winging its way to Iron supporting food banks because good friend of the channel, Charlie Woodgate, had a little bit of a friendly bet with me. The end result being that if Andy Irving played a singular minute of Premier League football this season, then Charlie would have to donate 100 finest English sterling pounds to the Iron Supporting Food Banks charity because he didn't think he would. In actual fact, his wording was, he will play as many minutes as you will, Gatesy. Well, That obviously isn't going to happen. I'm not going to play a single minute of Premier League football, I'm pretty convinced. So Andy Irving's already beaten me. £100. I am supporting food banks. Thank you very much. The rest of the half played out. We had one chance right at the death. They also had two other opportunities, but they were routine shots that Areola dealt with. One of them was a shot from Yarmouk, which he just sort of like Areola he dug it out sort of like outside of the boot, Yarmouk, and it was going towards Areola's right hand post, but he stretched to his right and sort of clasped the ball. Again, one for the cameras, as they would say. And the other was a shot. Keane Lewis Potter was on the Brentford left-hand side, and he cuts in and he lets go with a right foot shot. But Areola, again, it's a routine save. He just clasps it in, grasps it, pulls it into his body, textbook goalkeeping. As far as our opportunity, it was right at the last moments of the match. It was an effort from Carlos Soler. It was a looping sort of like opportunity that just dropped down. It was just going to go under the bar, but Mark Flecken got his hand to it and put it away for the corner. Was there time to take the corner? I mean, the referee obviously decided not. He blew the whistle. Lopetegui was going nuts on the touchline at that. And I do sort of like sit there and go, was there an opportunity to maybe have that? But the referee had already sort of like said that it would be 95 minutes. And I think by this stage it was 97. So, the referees obviously made that call. You just got to sort of go with it, really, at the end of the day. 1-1 is how it finished. As I say, I think we were good value. And on another day, if we'd have had some better finishing, we certainly created enough opportunities to win the game yesterday. Let's make no mistake. I'd say in terms of our second half performance, it was better than the first. And I think that we were ever so slightly, I believe, ever so slightly the better team out of the two that were on show yesterday. Now, you might disagree with that, which is absolutely fine. Now, I'm going to get into also my usual thing, the star players for each team. Well, if you haven't already noticed, and you might not be watching this necessarily on YouTube, please get across to the YouTube channel, because we do actually have a man of the match contest going. Now, again, I've tried to sort of work out and pick some players that I think were standouts. To be honest with you, I probably could have also gone with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Again, I thought there were certain things in the game yesterday he did well. There was, I think, maybe sort of like he was switched off a little bit for their goal in 37 seconds. If you watch it back, he seems to be a little bit sort of wondering what he's going to have for his dinner later that night or something. I don't know. He seems a little bit away with the fairies, but I probably could have included him. But I've got Thomas Soucek, Carlos Soler. As I say, I thought Soler had a good impact on the game for me, I believe. Jared Bowen and Max Kilman, they're the four options. Now, it may well be that there are other people like Wan-Bissaka that I could have legitimately put in there, but they're the four I've gone with. Please feel free to go across. At the minute, we've got 22 votes in there. The minute, 59% of the vote is going to Thomas Soucek. I will end that poll before the end of the stream, but if you haven't put a vote in, please get your vote in and have your say on who the man of the match yesterday was in claret and blue. But in my opinion, star men for each team. Right. Well, again, I've mentioned the star man in my opinion for Brentford. He's a player that I've got a lot of time and admiration for. I think Brian Mbeumo, he got the goal. Obviously, he was a bit of a handful. He had a couple of other chances after that, which he probably on another day could have made better of. Yesterday wasn't that day. But he's a real handful. I mean, he's a player that I'd actually love to see in claret and blue. I think he's one of those players. He's deadly with the finish, but he's a bloody hard worker. He really does sort of give his all for the calls, and he's a player that I think is very, very underrated. I think he'd been criminally underrated because of the fact that obviously Ivan Toney was the main man at Brentford. And obviously now he's gone. I think people are now seeing just the value of the player, really. So that would be my star man for Brentford. My star man for West Ham, I probably would not simply for the fact, but probably, there's a few players that I think could credibly say that they did enough to be considered for man of the match. I would slightly lean towards Thomas Soucek for the simple fact that he got the goal that brought us back into the game. He did work really hard. He was, look, we know his limitations. We know that he's not Kevin De Bruyne. But what his skill set is and what he does well, he does it bloody well. And my God, he's popped up with some important goals in his West Ham career. Say what you want about his technical limitations. Say what you want about sometimes in open play, the team having to carry him. When he pops up with a goal, and especially a goal that manages to salvage a point from a losing position or manages to convert 1 point into all three, which he has done many, many times, he is worth his weight in gold. He has spilt blood for this club. He runs his socks off. I've heard people say about hate for Thomas Souček. I don't think even the people that are critics of Thomas Souček, I don't even think that any of them would ever turn around and say that they hate Thomas Souček. I think that's quite ridiculous. They might turn around and say they think that he has his limitations on the football pitch, but do they hate him? No, I don't know a single West Ham fan, even the West Ham fans that are sort of like, no, Thomas Souček absolutely can't play. Thomas Souček isn't good enough. That doesn't necessarily, for me, that's not hate. That's just like an opinion, a footballing opinion that's completely valid, completely fair. If you was to sort of like be saying something quite personal about Thomas Souček, now that I would say is hate. Okay. I don't see any hate for Thomas Souček. I haven't got any hate for Thomas Souček. There are some games when I think that, yes, he is a passenger. There are some games when I think, actually, he might not be suited to this and maybe he needs to be a weapon used off of the bench. But yesterday, he was absolutely critical. He was absolutely critical to the outcome yesterday. And for me, that there is obviously the Premier League fan vote on that particular match. And as I say, Brian Mbeumo, I believe, was the top man for Brentford. But the top man for us, I believe, was Thomas Souček. As I say, if it hadn't have been for the goal, it might have been a little bit more of a difficult choice because, as I say, I do think Wan-Bissaka played well, despite the fact, as I say, I think he was a little bit away with the fairies for their opener. But I think that he, other than that, had a good game. I thought Jared Bowen was busy. I thought Max Kilman looked solid and should. I actually think Todibo looked decent as well. I really do. And I hope that this is now the beginning of a partnership between those two, which might sound really sort of like cruel on Mavropanos, but actually there might actually be the way back for him. And you might have seen a little glimpse of that from minutes of 46 onwards, but I will talk about that another time. But then, as I say, there's some other things that I'm a little bit concerned by. As I say, the Kudus substitution at half-time, is that all it seems to be? Is there an injury maybe that there's not being spoken about? Or is there a little bit of beef behind the scenes between the head coach and the player? I don't know. I guess we'll find out in the fullness of time. And then obviously Lucas Paquetá, who, as I say, in fairness to him, I did think that there were little glimpses that he was starting to sort of show the best of himself, but he come off, and as I say, I don't know whether there's, like I say, whether there's things going on. Whether we know there are things going on off the pitch, I think that's fairly well established fact. It's just that it now seems to be playing on him quite readily, and you're not quite sure. None of us are quite sure what's going on behind the scenes, how the situation is playing out, what possibly is out there for him to contend with. But I hope we see that the true Lucas Paquetá sort of like coming to the fore. So that's where we are at the end of this particular match. We're currently in 14th position in the Premier League. We've obviously improved a point, obviously, from where we were before with this particular draw. I'm still a little bit concerned that our average goals conceded per match, it's a little bit higher than I'd like it to be, and I'm sure that you agree with that. But hopefully now we've got hopefully what possibly will be a settled back four from here on in, I believe. Hopefully the understanding that those guys will have between each other will sort of like pay dividends. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the question, was the final score a fair reflection on how the match panned out? I believe it was. I think that both teams could have had opportunities to win it if they'd have been better at finishing. But in terms of what happened on the pitch yesterday, in terms of the general overall play, the contributions from all 22 players on the pitch at any one moment in time. Do I think that any one team deserved to win clearly over the other? No, not really. I think that really a draw is not an out of line result. So, and as I say, from our point of view, I think that given our past record against Brentford in the Premier League at Brentford, where we'd never picked up a singular point, the only time we'd ever gone to Brentford since they've been promoted to the Premier League a couple of seasons back, that we'd actually managed to do something was a game in the FA Cup 2 seasons ago when, irony of ironies, the former Brentford player Saeed Benrahma managed to score the only goal of the match. So other than that, we've really not done anything too much. So yeah, I'm that's actually an old one. Ignore that. In fact, I'll just get rid of that. There you go. That's the old Premier League table. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let me just really quickly get the current Premier League standings as we speak, because that was what I should have put on that slide, and I do apologize. Normally, I'm on point with this sort of stuff. So hold on a moment. So if I now share this, so this will show you guys where we now stand in the Premier League. It's still, as I say, it's still 14th. There you go. That's us there in 14th position. Played 6, won 1, drew 2, lost 3, scored 6, conceded 10, -4 goal difference, 5 points. The next game is away. The next game is home to Ipswich Town, which I think, whilst yesterday wasn't a must-win game in my opinion, and I said that before in the match preview, yesterday was not necessarily a must-win game. It was a must-not-lose game. I do believe that Ipswich is a must-win game. Let's be completely honest about it, and I don't mean to demean Ipswich. They're a wonderfully well-run football club. A good club in terms of the local community. They've got a great history and heritage going back to Bobby Robson, John Lyall as well. They've Sir Alf Ramsey winning them the league title in, what was it, 62, if I remember correctly, 61 or 62. No, it would have been 62 because 61 was Tottenham. Great heritage, great football club, all of the rest of it. But let's make no mistake, they've just come into the Premier League after an absence of, 20-odd years. We're an established Premier League team. We're the home team. We're the team that spent 150 million this season in the summer transfer window. Is it an unrealistic expectation that we should turn up next Saturday and turn them over? I don't think that's trying to be patronising to Ipswich. I think that's a reasonable expectation. And for me, next week it's 3 points or anything else is a failure in my book. But anyway, do I think that this result will have impact on our next match? Probably not so much. I think if it would have impacted on our next match if we'd have not got the point that we did, which obviously we did. But I think that in terms of this match, will it have any carryover into the Ipswich game? Not so much. Not so much. I really don't. But that's pretty much it from me. I'm now going to have a little look because I have been rabbiting away, and I'm now going to whiz through all of your comments and see if there's anything that I maybe need to discuss. So, Colin, hope you're well, mate. You want Loppy out? Okay. Should know his best 11. Does not changing side game to game. Playing players out of position. Players just not the same. Bowen, Kudus, I think Paquetá, as I say, I think that's that stuff going off the pitch, mate. I don't think that that's necessarily anything in terms of the manager so much. Yeah, I did wonder about Wan-Bissaka possibly being man of the match contender. I'm going to skip through. I hope you'll forgive me. I'm going to skip through the good mornings and all the rest of it, but good morning to all of you that are there. Spend 150 million to build a team around Big Tom, man of the match and top scorer. Yeah, I know, mate. I know. Last season at this time, we had 10 points, top half this season, 5 points, and looking over it. Yeah, but we didn't play the teams that we played. We've obviously played Man City, we played Chelsea, we've played Aston Villa, who it has to be noted are 3 teams in Europe this season. 2 of them are in the Champions League. One of them is the team that's won the Premier League the last 4 seasons. So, it's not a direct comparison, and it's different players as well. Don't forget. We didn't want Loppy when we wanted Moisey out. Are people really that thick? Yeah, I mean, look, that's pretty much where I'm at. Did I want Moyes out? Probably not. Did I think he had to go? Yes. Did I want Lopetegui in? No. But once he was in, do I want him to do well? Yes. That's pretty much it from me. Just going to have a little bit of a scroll down and just see if there's anything there's a few sort of like comments about Moyes and the current manager and all the rest of it. DiCanio says, let's remember this is Brentford's reserves. There was a lot of players out, DiCanio. I will say that, to be fair. There was a lot of players that are out. For Brentford, we did cover that in the preview. I'm just looking, as I say, there's a lot of conversation about Moyes and all of these things. So I'm probably not going to dwell on that too much. So I'm just scrolling through. Just that one sort of like, when the results are compared to last season, what will people say if we don't beat Arsenal and Brighton away this season? I bet that comparison won't be used if we don't beat them. I suppose, like I say, you can always look at statistics and things like that to prove that a giraffe is actually a horse. You know what I mean? So Ipswich will beat us, Spurs will beat us, so will Man United and Forest. That's optimistic. And you might be right, but we'll wait and see on that. Let's have a look. J-Lo said tactical. Where was the left wing replacement in Somerville? You may very well ask. I could not possibly comment. Just having a little look. As I say, there's a few pleasantries. AWB was the best midfielder. I think part of the positional thing, because as I say, if you look at the average position, yes, he was essentially a central midfielder. But obviously, don't forget, he had the first half as a right back and he had the second half as a left back. So it kind of skews the picture a little bit, I guess, as far as that's concerned. Colin says the big problem this season is that Kudus, Bowen, Pac-Man have underperformed. Also, not helping matters, not having a settled side, keep changing game by game. So the problem has to be Loppy. Partly, I think that I think Pac-Man, does he deserve to be playing? I'd ask that question. Kudus, I know left side is not his favoured position, but he's a professional footballer. So, Robert G. UFO, hope you're well. The problem is there is no pattern emerging. Very fair point. I'm just going to scroll down. Michael says, no injury, I reckon. Been a fallout. Kudus has been sulky last few games, stuck on the left. Again, perfectly possible. Perfectly possible. Colin comes back. I can also see so far that we will struggle to score goals, and goals win games. Definitely need sorting fast. Yeah, I mean, we created a lot of chances. We had an awful lot of shots at goal yesterday, Colin, as you saw from the slides earlier. But we just couldn't manage to get enough of them on target and make the goalkeeper work. Celebrating a draw against Brentford reserves. Look, from 1-0 down, mate, and given our record, yes, absolutely, I will celebrate it 100%. Daniela, hope you're well. Why in hell did I watch Match of the Day? Total disrespect to West Ham. I didn't watch Match of the Day, but that doesn't really surprise me. It probably doesn't surprise you either. And Daniela also goes on to say, come on, guys, we have a new team. It's going to take time to find his best team. Look, there's probably things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. And that is very fair, Michael. True West Ham fans support the present and remember the past. That's a very good way of saying that. We need to sort out conceding goals so early in the future. To be fair, Brentford had scored within the first minute of their previous 3 games. You probably think that Lopetegui had conversations to say, listen, boys, they've scored in their last 2 games early doors. Just keep things tight at the back. No silly mistake. Keep it tight. Let's get through the first 5-10 minutes and go from there. 37 seconds later, and we're facing an uphill battle. But as I say, I think we showed great character to turn things around through the adversity and various things that were going on. But anyway, right, I am going to disappear. But before I do, I'm going to press end poll and announced that after 27 of your finest English, or even maybe not English, because you might be anywhere around the world, and that's the beauty of YouTube. So it might even be that you're in the Czech Republic and you voted for your compatriot Thomas Souček with 62% of the West Ham massive vote as yesterday's man of the match away to Brentford Football Club. So that's basically it from me. I'm going to disappear and start my Sunday morning in earnest. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Before you all disappear, the 35 of you that are still watching, please don't forget to like. That's really important. The stream, comment on it, share the stream to your social media platforms, subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're new around here, and don't forget to hit the bell icon for alerts and new content. Remember, all these things you can do, take a couple of seconds of your time, are free of charge to you, and they help to grow the channel into something bigger and better down the track. And we thank you very much indeed for your support in this. Please also don't forget to give your support to the Iron Supporting Food Banks charity. We'll see you next time. Come on, you Irons.
Iron Supporting Food Banks collects food and cash donations for needy families in Newham Borough and beyond. Please consider making a donation via their Just Giving page, the link for which you will find in the description section of this stream. Come on, you Irons.
West Ham!